The Scout rifle concept is not brand new, but as you may have noticed, lately it's really starting to get some traction in the market. We have offerings from Ruger, from Savage, and of course the older Steyr that Jeff Cooper helped to develop. And what we're going to take a look at today is the one that really has been getting a lot of press. This is the Savage 110 Scout, and this one right here is chambered for .308 Winchester. This is probably the chambering that most people will buy this in. We're going to take a close look at its build, its parts, its accuracy, and then how it performed in some kind of real world and fun tests that my friends and I did out there. I'm Kyle Broderick. Welcome to the Social Regressive. Before we kick this off, I just wanted to thank Savage for letting me play with this rifle for a while, and thank you to the patrons of the Destructive Arts that keep the lights on around here. So what we're going to do is first we're going to break down what the Scout rifle concept actually is. It's kind of the future rifle as Jeff Cooper would have imagined it. It's supposed to be a compact rifle, supposed to be pretty short overall, lightweight using modern materials like plastics, aluminum, things like that. It's supposed to have a drop-free magazine. It's supposed to be chambered for something that's a little bit heavy-hitting, not, a varmint caliber or anything like that. It's supposed to have iron sights, and it's supposed to have if it does actually run a scope on it, it's supposed to be mounted pretty far forward. That way you kind of get your target and your view through the scope sort of a little bit closer to their own focal planes, so that you're not trying to really adjust focus in your eyes from a distant target, to something that's a little bit closer. This is supposed to make it a lot easier to track along with game and be able to take a shot. And then that scope is also supposed to be a low magnification scope. So with those criteria in mind, does the 110 Scout fit the bill? Yes, it does. This definitely hits those points and then some. It actually adds some really neat features that we're going to take a close look at. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you know the way that I test rifles. I don't just sit down on a bench and shoot it and then just talk about it for a little bit. Now what I do is I craft individual challenges to kind of meet the purpose of the rifle itself. If I have a long range rifle, I'm going to go shoot long range. And if I have a Scout rifle, I'm going to shoot at kind of practical sized targets at a variety of ranges, and that's what I did. The first challenge that I put this through is the moving target challenge. So I went out with a whole bunch of friends, there were 8 of us total, and we went out and we shot moving targets. So this was out at my gun range. We had this is a Tulsa Red Castle gun club, for those of you that are interested. This one actually has a pit so that we can have somebody walking around in the pit with a target over his head, and then we can shoot at those moving targets. Make sure that you check that video out, because that has not only some really good footage of people taking shots and then reacting to them right away, but the end section is very important. It has a lot of our comments on what we thought about this rifle and comparing it to a kind of standard deer rifle that we were testing at the exact same time. Same ammunition, same sort of distances, same parameters, and same zoom level on the scopes, just to see which one we might prefer. And we had a really good discussion at the end of that. You better check it out. Overall, we came away with a thought that the Scout really works. It does have that little bit of extra weight that I talked about on the barrel end, but really for us, it just meant that it was a very planted rifle when it came time to take a shot. It wasn't twitchy at all. It had enough lightness to it that we could very easily swing along and track with the target and get up on target really quickly. And then with that little bit of extra weight, it did just kind of settle down when you finally took the shot. And we were all very impressed with the way that it handled. The second challenge is one that I kind of goofed up a little bit. I had some difficulty with my target camera, and in the end, I didn't have enough footage that I could actually release a whole video. But what I'm going to do now is show you some of the highlights of what happened out there. What I wanted to do was to test the 110 Scout, where it wasn't a moving target, it was a moving me. I wanted to shoot at some zombie humans and some zombie squirrels, so I had some kind of larger cardboard targets and some little clay pigeons out there kind of representing the squirrels. And I was shooting at this And in order to take each of those shots, I really had to move myself around in order to get the shots off. So that was anywhere from a distance of about 10 yards to the first target out to, I believe it was 180 yards at the far plate. So let's take a look at some of the footage and see what I thought about it.
Meet your targets. First up, we have a zombie, followed by a tree squirrel right here. Down on the ground, we have some other squirrels running in. Then as we get further back, we have a zombie, and then all the way at the back, those white plates, those are 180 yards. So, first impressions with the 1X, it's right up close. Definitely gets tough a little further out. Yeah, the bigger targets were okay, the humanoid ones, but that last crazed squirrel there. No, it was me. I was jerking the trigger on that, trying to be a little bit too deliberate with it. Got to slow down, take my time. Let's try that again. Oh no, I hit it. Okay. Moving back to the humans. And the gong. I missed clay pigeon number 3 and the gong. Yep, got it. There we go. Come on. There. Okay. All right, I got one left, I think, for the gong. Let's do it. All right, I left this on 1.5 magnification. Actually felt pretty natural. Next time as I get further out though, I'll go ahead and roll up. Same thing with the, as I mentioned with the TRS 25. At these ranges I do have to aim pretty high over some of these close-up targets, like those clay pigeons. Got to aim up just slightly over the top of the green, and then I'm going to hit the orange. Ow. Ooh, that barrel's hot. There we go. Ooh, 4X is looking nice. All right, I think I got one for the gong. Come on, 4X, don't let me down. right, here are my final notes on these. I think overall I'm a fan of the scope. The red dot did just fine. I did like it. It did give a nice wide field of view, of course, so you could see plenty in the scope. You could see lots of what's going on around the target. But when it came time to actually hit the target, especially as things got a little bit further out, it was really nice to roll up to 4X. So I think overall I would point you toward one of the extended eye relief scopes that I mentioned, the Vortex, the Bushnell, the Nikon. As far as I know, the Nikon is the only one that has a ballistic drop reticle in it, and I think that might actually be a good application for this rifle. Normally I'm not a fan of BDC reticles. If I want precision, I'm going to get precision from something like, either a Mil Dot or Mil Hash or the wonderful Horus H59 reticle. But for something like this that's based on quick shooting and just within some of these really practical distances, it's supposed to be good from 0 to about 450 yards, somewhere in there. I think that BDC reticle could work really well.
As we take a close look at the parts on this rifle, we're going to start with those that make it a scout rifle, and then we'll back up and take a look at the ones that Savage threw in to make this a little bit extra special. So first off, we're going to take a look at the barrel. This is a 16.5-inch barrel, which is going to lend itself very well to that very small overall length that Cooper really wanted from a scout rifle. So overall, this runs anywhere from 37.5-inch to 38.5-inch length total. And you might be wondering about the variability there. We're going to talk about that here in a second. The barrel itself, as you can see, is a little bit on the thick side. It is a sporter style barrel, but it's basically a straight taper from about here, I think, down to the muzzle end, which is not entirely all that small. You can see the threading right here, which is 5/8 24. This does lend a little bit of extra weight. I think that this is the one major deviation that Jeff Cooper probably would have recommended against. The rifle that he really helped build, which was the Steyr Scout, had a pretty significant cutout. It trimmed down really quickly from the chamber and was a much thinner barrel overall, getting a lot less weight. The rifle in total is 7.72 pounds, and that's without a scope or anything. So that is actually a kind of heavy rifle for what this is, if you take into account its overall length. Now remember, this does have extra parts. This has bottom metal right here for the magazine. You also have that drop-free magazine, a little bit of a chunkier bolt right here. So it is a little bit heavy, but you're going to see in the challenges that we didn't really think that that was a problem at all, and actually that we like the weight overall. The chamberings that you get in this rifle, these are going to be some other things that Jeff Cooper was wanting. He wanted something that hit hard, and Savage really brought the goods. You have 308 Winchester, which is the one that we're testing right now. There is the 338 Federal, which is going to be a really hard-hitting little thing, especially within those kind of practical ranges. And then you have 450 Bushmaster, which is just a monster of a cartridge. And I'm really glad that that one is getting more traction, not just in Bushmaster ARs, but in some of these bolt-action rifles as well. Moving back here, the Scout concept calls for a drop-free magazine, and you certainly get it with a PMag included. This is a 10-round Accuracy International pattern magazine, which I'm a huge fan of. There are some magazines from all kinds of different makers that are going to have more of an AR pattern, so you're going to get a double stack magazine, but for reliable slick feeding, go single stack all the way. I think this was a brilliant move, and this works out really well. The rifle overall was very, very slick to shoot. I am a big fan of the way that this bolt runs. It has been very slick to feed, slick to eject and extract. This has just worked out really well, especially in concert with this magazine. I think that this was exactly the right way to go. This is almost as smooth as the Model 10 GRS that I tested a while back, which was just ridiculously fingertippy and easy to use. And then right here, we have the mag release on the bottom metal here for that mag well. This is very easy to actuate as well, and you can see that it kind of folds up and tucks up against the trigger guard. so that you get a nice smooth package overall. If you don't have the magazine attached, instead of just having this little piece of metal sticking out of the bottom that can catch on things, if you want to pop this into your gun rack or whatever, it just makes it really slick overall. Jeff Cooper wanted iron sights, and on the 110 Scout, you get them. You get this aperture sight here on the back, and then up on the front, you get a typical post style, or a little bit of a leaf shape sight right here that's protected by these two ears. You get a bit of a shroud on the side, and these are angled off just a little bit so that you're not confusing which one of the blades is which. It's going to be pretty easy to detect which one is your actual sight right here. And in testing, this worked out very well. Now, I did have a personal problem with the sights themselves. These are mounted, as you can see, very low on top of the receiver, and the combs that are provided with the 110 Scout, none of them were quite low enough for my particular face, but I have a strange face. I think that pretty much any of you guys, if you go out and buy one of these rifles, you will be just fine, but I have some really low cheekbones. I've mentioned this in a couple other videos. So in general, I need a much lower comb. That's why one of the reasons why I don't really like shooting 12 gauge shotguns all that much. They sit right on the bone, and they tend to just fire right up into my cheek. It's not much fun for me. And on this one, I couldn't get quite low enough. So what I did is I just went straight to a scope on this, and that's definitely going to get my eye a little bit higher, and I selected a comb that was going to fit just perfectly there. So while we're on this subject, the forward-mounted optics rail, it actually really works. You get a big, long Picatinny rail with a cutout here through the center. I believe that the original version of this rifle, they were missing a cutout through this rail, so you couldn't actually really use the iron sights unless you actually took the rail off. But yeah, they trimmed this down, and you can actually run both if you want to. This actually has kind of a quick detach. These are the Weaver quad lock rings. So if I wanted to, I could just make these thumb attachments, pop them on and off, and I could switch back and forth from irons to scope if I wanted. But yeah, this sits very low on top of the rifle, and yes, it works out very well. I did like how the Scout scope works overall. If you are looking for a scope for your rifle, whether it's, this Savage or the Ruger or whatever, some of the ones that I would take a close look at, there is a Burris, there is a Nikon, which is the Force XTR, I believe it's called. That one actually has a bullet drop compensating reticle in it, and I think would be a great match for this. And then I believe there still is a Bushnell Banner out there. For some reason, I was thinking that it was discontinued, but I think it actually is still out on the market. You can check out those, and they're all going to have very different price tags. It's probably going to go Banner, the Nikon Force XTR, and then the Burris. And it just is going to depend on what you're after. But yeah, on a Scout rifle, all of these are supposed to be low magnification, and what you're looking at right here is a Simmons 1.5 to 4. This is a gold medal pistol scope, and I really enjoyed how it worked. The original idea was that you're looking at something a little bit further out away from your eye, so it's easier to get your game or your target on the other end and your view through the scope in roughly, closer focal planes, so that you're not having to kind of bounce back and forth with your eye focus when you're looking through the scope, or if you're looking at the actual, real target off to the sides or whatever. And yes, this does work out for that. It makes it very easy to get on target and to take a shot and to be able to track afterward. I got sidetracked a bit by the scope, but we're going to come back and take a look at these iron sights again. This has a very nice little aperture on it. If you are used to shooting AR style sights, you're going to love this. It works exactly the same way. You just get a neat little aperture right here, then the post at the front, and all of the adjustment is made right here at the back. There's nothing on the front. It's just a solid sight up there. If you want to adjust your elevation or windage, you just loosen up some screws and you move this around. With the Scout parts out of the way, let's talk about the savageness of this rifle. First off, just take a look at its overall beauty. I really enjoy the new angles on the stock. I think that it is quite good looking. I love these little cutouts and creases. They've been running this through the B series rifles and into the MSR rifles that they have. just a little bit of extra rakishness, and it just looks really cool. And, you know, despite some of these interesting little facets and things, it's very comfortable overall. That was one of the big comments that we got when we did our big 8-man challenge. This felt very good in hand. These little rubber grips right through here, and the little kind of panels, the little molded cutouts that you see right here, they fit very neatly on the fingers, and this feels great in hand. When moving the gun, when bringing it up into shooting position, it just feels great. Same thing up on the front. You get these big rubber panels. This does have a nice thin forearm overall, and actually I did burn my fingers on the moving self challenge where I was moving around trying to shoot the zombie people and squirrels. But this, it still felt really nice. This feels very good in hand. And one thing that I might recommend is that you play around with where you put your hand when you do your shooting, depending on distances and whether the target is moving or not. I really liked having a very forward hand position, kind of like what people are doing with 3-gun ARs. I found that worked out very well to steady the rifle out. And then with some of them, I wanted to have my hand a little further back. I tried both, and it just kind of depended on the situation. You give it a shot and see what you think. Earlier, I talked about the smooth bolt action. This bolt is easy to run. Now, this is a Savage, so it's going to be a cock on open. Some people aren't quite used to that, but you're overcoming spring tension when you raise the bolt, make your throw, and then it's just straight back down. I myself am very used to it. It's going to depend on you. But one of the things that I really liked here is the bolt knob itself. This has a really interesting shape. It's not quite like a tactical bolt knob, which is going to be really gigantic. This is large enough that you're not ever going to miss it when you come up with your fingers. And the way that I found myself running it is that I would just kind of, jam my fingers in this little curved section behind the bolt knob, whip it up, run it like this, and it was just very smooth to get from position to position. This is not one that I ever found myself falling off of. It was always a very positive run on this bolt. They did a great job with this, and I don't know that I've seen this on any of their other rifles. I like it a whole lot, and I think they should continue to use this on maybe some of their more hardcore hunting rifles. The trigger down here is, of course, the Savage AccuTrigger, which is a big deal. I left this one tuned up just a little bit, not down at its lowest possible setting. This is a rifle that I wanted to fire deliberately. This is not one that I'm going to be taking to a bench or anything like that. So I wanted to have just that little bit of extra weight. And despite that extra weight that I put on there, this is, of course, that wonderful crisp AccuTrigger. So we got a really neat, clean break every time. Aha, I found the muzzle brake. Here it is. And you can see that it's not all that much larger than the diameter of the barrel right back here. This is not a huge muzzle brake, though it does work very well. It is generous enough for what it needs to be. You have these two decent chambers right here. These are going to do a great job of kind of shoving the rifle forward to reduce recoil. But here's the deal. Overall, this rifle just did not kick at all. This was a really easy gun to shoot, even without anything on the other end. Part of that might be that it's a little bit shorter barrel, so the bullets don't have as long a time to accelerate. Part of it might be the weight of the barrel. It's just a little bit on the heavy side for a little shorty like this. Then you have that squishy recoil pad. But overall, just something about the whole gun put together, it just feels really, really easy to shoot. We could have shot this all day without a muzzle brake or anything. But maybe for some of the younger shooters, or if you just want to be able to get back on target really quickly, this muzzle brake is going to do the job. You can see that this is a little bit different than your average muzzle brake. It has this nut attached to the brake itself, and this is the part that actually threads onto the barrel. So we can turn this most of the way on. And what we can do is we can set this to index to the proper position so that these chambers are shooting out to the side. So we've got that neatly lined up. And then we turn this nut. Oh, pardon me. This does take a little bit of finagling to get it into the right spot. Okay, so this is it right here. And what we would do now, once we get this exactly right, there we go, is now we crank this nut down. This nut has a little bit of a different size than probably any of the wrenches that you have. I tried a 13/16 like what we used on the Stealth Evolution, and this is not that size wrench. It's not 1 inch, it's not 3/4. This is 0.875 inches. And I don't know what that translates to in metric. I'll go see if I can find that out. But if you have some kind of crescent or universal, I know that those are annoying wrenches to use and you don't really want to use them on a nice piece of equipment. But this might be the time to break those out unless you have some wacky metrics. The 110 Scout includes 2 swivel studs, one at the back, and then one up here on the fore end like usual. And for up here, I recommend that you don't, maybe attach a bipod or anything. This is not really a rifle that's intended to be shot from a rest like that. My recommendation would be to go out and get yourself a good sling. This right here, I believe, is a Butler Creek. This is a nice adjustable one, so if you want to be able to go from an over-the-shoulder configuration very quickly to a, kind of a hasty sling around the arm so you can get good and steady, this is going to work out really well. And then this right here is even lighter and simpler still. This is a Black Hawk, which I like very much. I tested this on the Savage B22. This has rubber backing up near the shoulder end. And then this is kind of a fixed position. Once you get this in place, it's going to be really comfortable. But yeah, this one is very light, and it might match up really well to the Scout concept overall, where it's supposed to be really hasty into action. Now for the real party trick of the whole Savage 110 series, the replaceable parts. Inside the rifle case, you get all kinds of different cheek risers and butt pad spacers. These are not extra parts that you have to buy. These actually come with the rifle. So you can make this rifle fit you exactly. And I've been very happy with how that's worked out. You can increase your length of pull by as much as 1 inch. You can get anywhere from a 12.75 to 13.75, which for me is a little bit on the short side. But actually in real world shooting, I didn't mind at all. It still felt really nice. But you also get a variety of these comb risers right here, and you can just pop these out really easily. I'll show you how that works. Swapping cheek risers and butt pad spacers is super easy, barely an inconvenience. In the package, you get 5 different comb heights and 4 different butt pad spacers, which you can swap around to fit your dimensions. And it includes screws you can see in the background back there, for getting those different spacers in place. Now, if you go out and get some extra long screws, if you really need an extra long length of pull, I could see how you could stack multiple butt pad spacers there and get yourself a little bit further out than that 13.75 inches of length of pull. So over here, there's really only one trick that I can mention about swapping these parts out. It is quite easy, but one of the things that those of us that have built stocks before know is that you don't just take your Phillips head screwdriver and then stick it in these holes to remove the screws. First, lube it up a little bit. Just put a little bit of some kind of grease on there because otherwise you could end up tearing up this kind of soft rubber. We want this to last as long as possible, and this is going to help. Also, use a thin screwdriver. And there we go. So there's the butt pad and the thickest spacer. And then these just pull apart. So if you want a shorter length of pull, just go grab one of the other options over here and swap it on there. And while we have this off, let's take a look at that cheek riser. To remove the cheek riser, simply push toward the back, and then it should just lift right out. It fits a little bit snugly, which is exactly what you want. You don't want this rattling around while it's on the rifle, but it just pops off easily like that. So if we wanted to go to the lowest cheek piece to make sure that we can see down those iron sights. There we go. All right, that's in place. And then if we were going to change out our spacer, we would choose a different screw right here. I'm gonna go ahead and put this back the way I had it though. I have a pretty long length of pull. In general, I need 14.5 inches length of pull. So I'm gonna get the best that I can right now, which is 13.25. And then you just screw this back together. Again, making sure that you have some kind of lube on the screwdriver. While we're here looking at the buttstock, I want to mention one aftermarket product that some of you may have interest in. The AccuStock is really good for being able to configure to whatever your particular shape is. It's not, however, exactly quick if you want to be able to jump from one person to the next. So if you have multiple people in your family, you want to be able to take out shooting and kind of instantly get it set up for them, you might take a look at maybe swapping out at some point to the Boyd's At-One stock. This is one that I've been testing here for a while. You guys have seen this on a couple of my rifles, and this is very quick to get into position. Yes, they do have this inlet for the 110 right now. So if you want to be able to drop your action into this instead, it's going to do a couple things for you. It's going to pitch the balance of the rifle a little further back if that's what you like. It's going to increase weight overall, so keep that in mind. That might be a detraction for you. But you can swap around some of those parts, and you can get kind of instant cheek riser and butt pad extension if maybe you want to go from a kid in the family up to one of the adults, or somebody just has a different size than somebody else. Now for accuracy. You know me, I am a Savage fan. I love the way that floating bolt head works, and I usually get extreme accuracy out of these Savage rifles. This one is a bit of an exception though. The original Scout was not really designed to be a tack driver, and this kind of follows suit. About the best that I could get with hand loading was about a 2-inch group, as you can see right here, using 150 grain full metal jacket boat tail bullets. And the best group that I got overall was with this Federal XM80C. If you do buy this rifle and you want some kind of plinking ammo or something that you can easily keep stocked for, keeping around the ranch or whatever, check out the XM80C. It did like it quite a bit. But one of the things that you have to keep in mind is that this rifle is designed for kind of practical accuracy, being able to hit some of your larger targets at basically, kind of normal ranges where you'd be standing and shooting. This is not designed to be a bench rest rifle or anything like that. So this works out just fine. And especially in the testing that we did, we found that it was fine. It was perfectly good to be able to nail a human-sized target anywhere from that 100 yards and 200 yards where we're doing moving targets, and then some of the longer shots that we took. After these tests and challenges, here's my final takeaway. The Scout concept works, and not just the concept, but this individual rifle, the Savage 110 Scout. It steps away from some of the things that we traditionally value about hunting rifles, which are going to include longer barrels for more muzzle velocity, higher magnification scopes, and then continually trying to shoot smaller and smaller groups to get that perfect cloverleaf. This one doesn't really concern itself with any of that, and what this ends up being is a very compact package that is very easy to swing up onto target and get that shot and put a good wallop on game, or if you're trying to defend your homestead or whatever. This is going to get the job done simply and easily. In those tests, we found that the rifle swung very naturally, but it still felt very planted when it came time to take the shot. And in the end, I just have to give the Scout concept a hearty endorsement. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. Even if you didn't like this particular content, go ahead and subscribe. There's probably something coming that's more up your alley. Check out this playlist right here. This is going to have videos in a similar vein to what you just watched. These 2 videos we cherry-picked for you. And finally, The Social Regressive is on Patreon. So you can become a patron of the Destructive Arts and earn some goodies while helping us to provide high-quality videos just by kicking us a few bucks a month. Thanks a bunch for your patronage.